Welcome, everyone, to Fire and Water, the podcast. I'm Tennyson Wolf, and I'm here with my good friend and fellow conspirator, Quinita Robertson. We love welcoming you into this podcast where we get to reflect out loud about sometimes some very specific topics and sometimes some rambling kinds of things to find our way. We do think of this offering as adding some wisdom and soulfulness, or inviting it, trying to create and grow some wise and soulful leaders as we go along the way. So welcome, and thank you for joining today. Today, Quinny, do you want to start? Do you want to roll with that a little bit? Did anything
I don't
come to you?
know. I don't know. I think today's call is, I love how you said, Tennyson, we were talking a couple minutes ago. It's more like a just a sip of tea. It's just a little call about,
Yes.
for me, like we both just have been going,
Mm-hmm.
and like moving, some of it together, some of it separate. But I
Mm-hmm.
was looking back at my calendar and, you know, um, at least 5 weeks ago when I took my son to school and went to my niece's birthday party. It's like every weekend has been full until this last one,
Yeah. Yeah.
and most of the spaces in between.
Yeah.
And I usually am not one that goes for that long, that consistently. I'm usually pretty good at rest in between the pockets, but life just happened. Some of the stuff was planned and some of it wasn't, that showed up, but was important to tend to. And so, I have this question, like, how are we navigating the muchness of life when it gets full? And in what ways do I feel like, for me, that I'm doing that well? In what ways do I need to like lean in and practice a little bit more, something different? I'm just kind of in those questions.
Well, I'm in those questions too. I'll pick up for a little bit. Yeah, I just feel that it's a Monday morning as we record this, and typically we record this so that it releases earlier in the month, and some of that busyness that we were in just had us doing some other things, and yet we've decided to come together and see what we come up with here today. I am feeling the allotness of it. I am feeling the muchness of it. And for me, I returned to my place in Utah where I live late Friday night and had a weekend of doing some of the basic life things, some laundry and some groceries, and reconnecting in with my two sons that are here, and tending to a few work things also. And then comes Monday morning, and I can feel the part of me that just feels like I need to jump in and rush. And I don't like that feeling. Like, I don't like being defaulted into that feeling. I don't mind doing stuff. I don't mind accomplishing things. I don't mind, contributing to the bigger purpose and arc of it all. But I can tell when I start to feel rushed and sort of, driving a little too quickly, that isn't quite aligned with the being that is me, or the pace that we've been in. And you said something as we were talking and pre-talking, Juanita, that there's a certain what did you call it? Was it baseline? Is that what we're
Yeah.
talking about? Yeah, there's a certain baseline of being together and doing the work that we do, and having coffee in the morning, and those kind of things. And then there's a certain baseline to being solo again. And it takes a minute to adjust. This is what you just spoke. That means a lot to me. It takes a little bit, it takes a minute to adjust to being in that baseline, and then coming back to the baseline of solo also. So I can feel that in me on a Monday morning here.
Well, and I think for me, that's what do I guess I come with the question for myself, what do I need in those transitions?
Mm-hmm.
And what is just gonna take a minute? Like what, some the need might just be the allowance of, and of knowing that you're going from one room to another. And so there's a transition that happens,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a different space.
Mm-hmm.
And so just trying to get clear about those things. Mm, how do I allow it more? How do I be in relationship even with those transitions,
Mm-hmm.
and know that I am one, that it takes me a little bit to get into spaces and a little bit to get out of spaces. I can do the work. I can go from one workspace to a next workspace and not feel it as much. Um, I think,
Mm.
but for me, it's different in the bigger arc of, okay, those workspaces where it's different. Tennyson, you and I had like moving in one workspace and out of that one into another and then into another. We still have the overarching kind of holding that the two of
Mhm.
us are doing together. And then you left,
Yeah.
and I'm now getting ready to go into these workspaces by myself, and so that's a whole different
Yeah.
holding too.
Yeah.
And so just being aware of that, that the even though it takes a little bit from workplace to workplace, but not as much,
Yeah.
if I know I'm holding all of it through whatever time period, or if we're holding it together, then that's even better because I'm not holding it by myself,
Yeah.
to kind of be in the flow of whatever you and I are doing or whether
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, that's good. Can I pick up there?
Yeah.
Because I think you're speaking to something that feels like I started noticing maybe 20 years-ish ago, and I still don't know exactly what to call it, but for sake of our sharing, there's something about the fields that we plug into, like an energetic field. And I relate to it at the layer that is, okay, you and I, and in the most recent example, add Amy Houghton into that,
Hmm.
where we are waking up and saying, okay, what are we doing with this group of people? Is there a layer of overnight news,
Hmm.
improvements, evolutions of what we feel compelled to offer with them? And and it's like when we're together, I feel like we're kind of plugged into a stronger current together, or, I don't know what to call that, a deeper current together. And in the moment when it's happening, it just feels oh so natural. And when it's done, in other words, I return to my home in Utah, Amy returns to what she's doing, you return to your space. When we unplug from that field, all of a sudden it feels very noticeable to me. So
Hmm.
that the current changes, the strength of the field or something like that. And I know that as a truism, if you will, in just being with groups along the way, where if I used last week as an example, we're together with a group of 20-ish people, 20 to 25 people in a room for 3 days or 4 days.
Hmm.
And there's a way that we come to just kind of sync together or sync up or be plugged in with one another. I don't know what metaphor to use there, but it feels very real to me that when that's done, ooh, what felt like it would never end or never change changes pretty quickly.
Hmm.
So I think I'm relearning a pile of that. And it points back to some of what you're saying. It's like, what does it take to just be, you know, conscious, aware, awake, and kind with the reality of all of that? And that's true probably for all of us.
I think another thing that I think all that you said, yes. And another thing for me in the space of we're traveling again more
Mm-hmm.
is just getting used to that rhythm as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've like forgotten the rhythm of, oh yeah, how long does it take me to not only travel to someplace, like actually time wise to get there and get back, but
Mm-hmm.
the time that it takes to even recruit from traveling.
Right.
Like, because there's energy in that. There's energy in getting someplace.
Mm-hmm.
We have a pretty good rhythm of wanting to arrive, not on the day that we're doing the work, but to have at least a day ahead to be in the space and to kind of get the energy of that space together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there is the time, like we have a couple buffers of that, I think. When you come here, there's the buffer of you getting here,
Mm-hmm.
usually, and then the buffer of, okay, now we're going into the work. This time we kind of didn't do that. We went straight into work the next day, but it was something that we know we can go into, and we did fine. And then had a buffer for the next set of work.
Yeah. I think that one of the things, I feel like we're sort of revisiting some obvious things, right? But I feel, and it feels important actually.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I feel renewed here is that it it just takes some time. I'll say it more personally. I need some time to be able to shift between those spaces. And whatever happens in belly and heart and in mind, I feel like I can try to shift my mind pretty quickly and enjoy that. But there's a way in which, like, my belly, has a different speed it works at
Yeah.
in the transitions, or my heart has something. And I suppose I'm resisting a little bit here, in that I don't want my heart to have to work at warp speed to keep up with my mind, something like that. It's like I think, you know, some things just need some dwelling, or some things need some emptying, and I need those things. Um, I told you that I just listened to a couple of our dear ones podcast. It's Libby Smith, and she had Aaron Gilmore on as a guest. And so I was listening to it, and they were talking a little bit about what it's like for Aaron to return into quote regular work from a 3 month sabbatical. And I just love listening to them speak about these things. Um, and one of the things that they spoke is like the courage to pause, the courage to empty, the courage to be still, as opposed to now I got to get back to triple tasking everything. And I know that triple tasking is a part of life sometimes. I'm not trying to deny those things, but boy, there's something about holding ourselves and others in the transitions with a kindness, which I suppose is what I'm looking for mostly with myself, instead of feeling like I need to heroically belly up to the bar of, massive multitasking. Ooh.
One of my teachers years ago said to me that one of the reasons that it's so exhausting when we're doing spiritually healing work
Mm,
is because the vibration of spirit is a lot quicker than
mm,
the physical vibration.
mhm,
So when we stop, it's like our bodies have to catch up to our spirits,
mhm.
and it's exhausting.
Yeah,
And I wonder with that, if, the deeper we go in the work, the longer recovery time we have
yeah.
on both sides. And how so often I think we just treat it like every other work, or like
Mhm,
how we've always done it. But, someone was joking the other day because I said this work requires a lot of horizontal time. And it's that space in between. Like we can't keep going at
mhm,
the same pace if we're
mhm.
saying we want higher vibrational work.
Oh gosh, that's good.
And, I think that we can forget that and treat it like we've always done it,
Yeah,
instead of saying, no, we can't do this. Even like I think about like we meet just our regular meetings, we have 3 times a week for an hour and a half.
yeah.
And I often will say, it takes me even an hour to get in. Like
Mm,
I'm just getting in and I feel like, oh, it's time to end.
mm,
And it's how, and I don't know how we accommodate that, especially being in different geographical locations.
mm.
But it's a question for me. Like, how do I um either get in quicker or set up a different rhythm to know that it takes something different to get in?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm really drawn to or just know that it takes a something different, because I'm playing with metaphor a little bit here and trying to interrupt some of the speed pattern.
Yeah.
So, I know I have some of that speed and efficiency story and pattern and default and all of that in me, and runs in society. And so there's something energizing about it, but also fatiguing too. And then I'm thinking just of more physical metaphors, like if you run a marathon today, I have not run marathons, that's not in my body. But if you run a marathon, chances are you're not going to run a marathon tomorrow or the next day. Like maybe it's a week later or something like that. But
Yeah.
There's a naturalness to the pause or the space in between that in that scenario is kind of replenishing the body. And I think there's something important here that we're touching about what replenishes or maybe just rests the
Yeah.
spirit so that it's ready to go again. It never feels like a totally off to me, but it's just like, let's not run marathons every day of the week.
Yes.
Wise and it's not kind for this
And
body.
what are those different layers for us individually
Yeah.
and for us collectively?
Yeah, totally.
So, because I think right now we're talking a lot about, kind of us individually, but I
Hmm.
think of us as a team, or even if I think
Yeah.
about our fire and water group, what's we have stuff as pace in between it, like
Yeah.
what's required for whatever it is that we say we're up to at the moment.
Hmm. Hmm. That's good. So let's pull it back. You and I, like we start out with this 5 minute conversation that turns into a 50-minute
Yeah.
conversation, and then it turns into a lifetime of learning, right? There's all of this. If we just try to pull this back a little bit into, okay, given everything that we shared here, you and I can both speak to it. What's the connection or the insight that we bring to living as human beings in these days, these times, so that maybe comes back to a simple insight or a simple practice. Let's do that. Juana?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is it's
Mm.
this question for me of what restores kindness and love.
Yeah,
That it's not kind, like you're saying, to have back to back to back to back to not be taking rest in between.
yeah,
As a matter of fact, it's a form of violence.
uh,
And so this piece about especially those of us who are working, toward eliminating violence or adding peace to the world, right? Like how do we start with us? How do we
mm,
not add to that violence by the way that we're living?
yeah,
And so for me, it's that question of what restores
yeah,
love and kindness.
yeah.
You?
Good. Yeah. So I'm following you in a way, and the little twist that I'm putting on it that feels, um, yeah, feels right for me is in my body. Like, how can I? It doesn't even feel like it's a how question. It's just a desire. Like, I want to live with that kind of kindness energy in my body, not just as a cognitive construct or an emotional construct even. I This represents so much of one of the paths of learning for me is how to further welcome any of this kind of knowing and practice and kindness as as a deeply sourced feeling in body. And yeah, because I love doing stuff and I love getting stuff done, but I don't like worrying about it, and I don't like following a fear metaphor or fear narrative. So to return to something about just mm, the deeper attentiveness to body and what feels kind now, including letting go of that deadline or changing it. Yeah, something in that has me wanting to follow it. So
Mhm.
body body knowing, I suppose, is where
Yes.
that comes back to, right?
Yes. Mm,
Yeah.
the
And I'm a
embodiment
person.
of it.
I'm a human trying to do that, and I'm also a man trying to do that.
Yeah.
So these things feel important to me.
Yeah. Me too.
Cool. You got
That's
anything
good.
else to add in there?
I just I just think that so much of it for me is coming back to the question that I give to a lot of my coaching clients in each
Hmm.
moment. If I were loving myself, what would I be doing?
Yeah.
And our decisions, and some of it
Mm.
is that loving myself and loving others was the 5 weeks of going, going, going.
Yeah.
And some of it is, is saying, nope, I'm not going to do this at this point.
Now I'm
So,
watching Columbo.
now I'm watching, and now I'm couch bonding and watching Columbo, right? So that's what loving myself meant at that point. But can we listen to that? Because it's never the thing we're doing, it's always the why.
Yeah.
I think it's more so of the why are you doing that? Why am I doing that? Is that coming from a place of love and care?
That's beautiful.
That's me.
Well, I think by way of tucking this in today, then it is a thank you to those that listen and those that forward this on. In a way, Juanita, what we often do is we try to think and feel and imagine and wonder out loud with one another. And I know a lot of the people that we are so closely connected to are doing their versions of think and feel and wonder out loud and all of that. So I think what we're offering here is at least some of the unscripted real timeness of sorting through such things in a conversation over a sip of tea or a sip of coffee. So thanks to everybody who listens and for the contributions and support that any of us are making towards a kind of awake or conscious way, more conscious way of living. We appreciate the commitments to wisdom and coming of age and soulfulness here. For more information, there's a couple of places that you can go to. One is we have our shared website now, Juanita, qtwisdom.com. We continue to each have our individual sites, nizuzu.com, tennysonwolf.com. We've got our fire and water site, but you can get to all of that through the QT Wisdom site now. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.